The wind screamed across the frozen land, a wild cry that shook the old mountains and rolled down into the endless white plains. Snowflakes cut through the air like knives, sharp and merciless. The storm had been raging for days, but this night it grew stronger, heavier, more cruel. In the middle of this frozen wasteland stumbled a small figure. She was no more than a child, her frame thin, her steps weak. Her feet sank deep into the snow, and every breath she took turned to frost in the air. Her tiny hands trembled as she held them close to her chest, trying to find warmth, but the storm gave her none. She was not human. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, almost silver under the storm clouds. Her wide eyes, far too large for her face, searched the white nothingness for shelter. She had markings along her cheeks, faint glowing lines that seemed to dim with every step she took. Her people called those markings the light of life. But hers were fading fast. Her name was unknown to anyone here, for she had been left behind. Her tribe had moved when the storms grew too strong. They had looked at her, small, weak, different, and decided she would only slow them down. They left her with nothing but a torn piece of cloth and a whispered word she barely understood, weak. Now she stumbled, the storm pulling at her like claws. Her legs shook and gave way, and she fell face first into the snow. The cold bit into her skin, and she could no longer feel her fingers. She wanted to cry out, but her voice was too weak. Her lips moved anyway, whispering for her mother, for her father. But the only answer was the endless howl of the storm. Her vision blurred, her glowing eyes dimmed. She thought this was the end, the last breath, the last moment. She closed her eyes, wishing the snow would swallow her pain quickly. But then footsteps, heavy, steady, breaking the storm's rhythm. They crunched against the snow, one after another, slow but strong. The child forced her eyes open, blinking through the freezing wind. A dark shape moved in the white haze, tall, broad, nothing like her kind. Fear and hope mixed inside her chest. Was it a beast? Was it another storm spirit come to finish her? Or was it something else? Her fading heart beat faster. The figure came closer, and through the storm she saw him. A man, wrapped in thick layers of cloth and armor. Snow frozen into his beard and hair. His eyes were sharp, narrowed against the storm, a human. He stopped when he saw her on the ground. His breath clouded the air as he bent down. His gloved hand touched her shoulder gently. He turned her face up and saw her alien features, the faint glowing lines across her skin. For a moment he froze. His mission was not to find survivors. He had been sent across this frozen world for supplies, not rescues, and yet, looking at her small shivering body, looking at those dim glowing eyes, he felt something twist in his chest. The child's lips parted. A broken word escaped her throat. Not human words, but he caught the meaning. A single plea, help. The man stared at her, the storm battering his back. He could leave, he could walk on, but something inside him refused. He slid his arms beneath her, lifting her easily. She was so light it felt as if he carried nothing but snow. Her small hands clutched weakly at his coat, holding on even as she slipped in and out of consciousness. The man adjusted his grip and pulled her close against his chest, shielding her from the icy wind. He looked ahead, but there was nothing, only white emptiness. Somewhere out there. There had to be shelter, but the storm had swallowed every landmark, every trail. He cursed under his breath and began to walk, his boots sinking into the deep snow. The storm pushed against him, trying to drive him back. His body ached, and his pack was heavy, but he refused to stop. Each step felt endless, but he kept moving. The child's breathing was faint, each exhale like a whisper. He checked her face, saw her markings flicker weakly. He muttered to her, though she could not understand, words meant to keep her alive. Stay with me, little one, don't give up now. But the storm was not silent. In the distance, through the blizzard, came another sound, low, deep, a growl carried by the wind. The man stopped, turning his head, his eyes narrowed, his instincts sharpened. There was more than just snow in the storm. Something moved out there, hidden in the white, hunting. The child stirred in his arms, her dim eyes opening. She whispered something again, but he could not catch it. Then she trembled harder, as if she too felt the danger in the wind. The man tightened his hold on her and kept walking. His mind raced. Shelter first, fight later. He needed walls, fire, anything to keep her alive through this night. Behind him, the growl came again. Louder this time, closer. The storm was not the only enemy, and the man knew, as he trudged forward into the endless white, that the night was far from over. The storm roared louder as the man pushed forward. His arms ached from carrying the alien child, but he did not let her go. Every step felt like a battle, snow rising up to his knees, wind cutting across his face. Still he pressed on, because he knew if he stopped, the small life in his arms would fade away. The child's head rested against his chest, her glowing lines dimmed almost to nothing. She was slipping deeper into sleep, too deep. He looked down and saw her lips turning pale. He clenched his jaw and shook her gently. "Stay awake, little one, don't give up on me," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand his words. Her eyes fluttered half open for a moment, and she whispered something in her alien tongue. The man could not make out the meaning, but he caught one familiar word through the storm. Help. It struck him in the heart, pushing him forward faster. He scanned the storm for shelter. The land stretched out in endless white, but he knew somewhere in these frozen plains there were ruins of old outposts, human or alien, maybe abandoned, maybe broken, but even a broken wall would be better than nothing. The storm howled again, and then came that sound. The growl, it was closer now, a deep, throaty rumble that carried hunger. The man turned his head, squinting into the white haze. Shadows moved in the storm, low to the ground, circling. "Not now," he muttered under his breath. His free hand reached to his side, pulling the metal handle of his plasma blade. A faint blue light flickered as the weapon came alive. He kept walking, but his senses sharpened. He knew the creatures were following, waiting for weakness. The child stirred again in his arms, as if she too sensed the danger. Her small hand, weak and trembling, clutched his coat tighter. The man glanced down and saw fear in her eyes. Even half asleep she knew what hunted them. He whispered to her, "Don't worry. I won't let them touch you." His voice was firm, stronger than the storm. Time felt endless as he walked. Each minute stretched into hours. The growls came and went, sometimes close, sometimes distant, but always there, shadows circling, testing. Finally, through the storm, a dark shape appeared ahead. At first, he thought it was another trick of the snow, but as he drew closer, the shape grew clearer. It was a structure, half buried in ice and snow, an outpost. The man's heart lifted for the first time since he found her. He quickened his pace, forcing his tired legs to move faster. The child shifted weakly, as if sensing hope too. The outpost was old, its metal walls rusted and cracked. A broken antenna leaned at an angle, half snapped by storms long ago. The door was frozen shut, ice sealing it like stone. The man set the child down gently against the wall. Her eyes barely opened. He whispered, "Stay here, just a moment." She did not answer, but her faint breath told him she was still alive. He drew his blade again, striking at the ice around the door. Sparks and steam hissed into the air as the blade cut through frozen layers. He slammed his shoulder into the door once, twice, and finally the metal gave way with a loud crack. He rushed back to the child, lifting her once more, and carried her inside. The air was still cold, but without the direct wind it felt almost warm. The room was dark, filled with broken crates and rusted metal, but it was shelter. He laid her on a broken bed frame, pulling his heavy coat around her small body. Her faint glow reflected in the dim light, so fragile, so close to being extinguished. He looked around the outpost, searching for anything useful. His light found broken panels, shattered glass, but in the corner, a fuel cell, old and half-drained. Still, it might work. He forced it into the heater unit, sparks flickered, and then a weak flame lit the room. Warmth. The man sighed with relief. He returned to the child, placing his hand against her forehead. She was still cold, but not as icy as before. He whispered again, though she could not understand. "You're safe now, little one, you're safe." But outside, the storm did not sleep. The growls came again. This time at the door, claws scratching against the metal. The beasts had followed. They had the scent. The man stood, his hand tightening on the hilt of his blade. He glanced back at the small alien girl lying weak on the bed, her life hanging by a thread. He swore silently that he would not let anything take her. Not the storm, not hunger, not the monsters that circled outside. The scratching grew louder. Red eyes glowed faintly through the cracks in the wall. The man braced himself, ready for what was to come, and in that broken, half-lit outpost, in the heart of the storm, the fate of both the human and the fragile alien child became tied together, for he was no longer just a wanderer in the snow. He was her protector, whether he had chosen it or not. The outpost groaned as the storm slammed against its broken walls. The weak heater hummed faintly, sending out only a little warmth, but it was enough to keep the child alive. The human knelt beside her, his eyes sharp as he watched her chest rise and fall, shallow breaths, fragile but steady. Her glowing lines along her cheeks flickered in the dim firelight. They looked like fading stars, sometimes bright, sometimes almost gone. He touched her small hand gently through his gloves. It was cold but not as frozen as before. Slowly, he felt her fingers twitch as if she was fighting to hold on. "You're safe now," he whispered, even though he knew she could not understand his words. His voice was calm, steady, like a wall against the storm. But outside, the storm beasts prowled. Their claws scraped along the metal walls of the outpost, their growls rolling through the night like thunder. Red eyes glimmered in the cracks, watching, waiting. They could smell weakness. They could smell prey. The man stood and drew his plasma blade again, its faint blue light cutting through the dark. He checked the door he had broken open. It was shut now, but it rattled under the weight of the storm. He knew it would not hold forever. He searched the room for supplies. The shelves were mostly empty, but he found a few scraps. Old ration packs covered in dust, a cracked canister of water, and a half-broken lantern. It was not much, but it would have to do. He carried some of the food to the child, breaking a small piece and pressing it gently to her lips. At first she did not react, her eyes still closed, but after a moment, her lips moved weakly. She swallowed the tiny bite, then another. Slowly her chest rose with a slightly stronger breath. Her glowing eyes fluttered open, just for a second. She looked at him, confused, afraid, but alive. The man smiled faintly, a rare expression on his weathered face. He whispered, "Good girl, keep fighting." She did not understand the words, but his tone, his warmth, made her blink as if she knew she was no longer alone. Hours passed slowly. The storm raged on without mercy. The heater flickered now and then, threatening to go dark. The man stayed awake, his weapon ready, every sound outside sharpening his instincts. The child stirred again. Her voice was faint, but he heard her whisper in her own language. He caught only a few words, broken by weakness. "They left me." The man's jaw tightened. He understood enough. Her people had abandoned her, left her in the storm to die. Anger burned in his chest. He had seen cruelty before, but leaving a child to freeze in the snow was something his heart could not accept. He touched her hand again and said softly, "I won't leave you, never." Suddenly a loud crash shook the walls. The door rattled hard, metal bending. The beasts outside had grown bolder. Their hunger was stronger than their fear. The human stood quickly, blade in hand. His eyes narrowed. The heater's small flame threw shadows across the walls. The child's frightened eyes followed him as she tried to push herself up, but she was too weak. The first strike came. A claw tore through a crack in the wall, scraping sparks into the air. A red eye glared through the hole, followed by another and another. They were surrounding the outpost, testing its strength. The man moved fast, dragging a heavy crate to block the weakest part of the wall. Another strike slammed into the door, bending it further inward. The beasts snarled, their hot breath steaming into the cold air. The child gasped, her body trembling. Her small hand glowed faintly. The markings on her skin pulsed like a heartbeat. For a moment the glow grew brighter, spreading through the cracks in her skin like liquid light. The man noticed. He turned toward her, surprise flashing across his face. She was using some kind of power, even in her weakness. The glow spread around her, faint but steady, and the beasts outside hesitated, growling louder but stepping back from the walls. The man realized the truth. They feared her light, but the glow was draining her fast. Her head fell back against the bed, the brightness fading again. She was too weak to hold it, too fragile. The man rushed to her side, holding her small hand in his. "Save your strength, little one. I'll fight for you," he whispered. The beasts howled in rage, slamming against the door again. The man stood tall, gripping his blade with both hands. His breath misted in the cold air. His heart beat steady. He had faced battles before, but this was different. This time he was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. The door buckled inward, claws tearing at the edges. The heater's flame flickered wildly. Shadows danced across the walls. The man raised his weapon high, ready for the moment the beasts broke through. The storm screamed outside. The beasts snarled. The child trembled on the bed. And in that small broken outpost, the line between life and death grew thin. The man whispered one last promise into the night. "They'll have to kill me before they touch you." And as the door finally split open with a violent crack, the first pair of glowing red eyes lunged through the darkness. The door burst open with a thunderous crack. The wind roared in, carrying snow and the stench of the storm beasts. Their glowing red eyes glared in the dark like burning coals. Their snarls rattled the air, sharp claws scraping against metal. The human moved without hesitation. His plasma blade hissed to life, shining blue against the storm's shadows. The first beast leapt through the broken doorway, its jaws wide, fangs glistening with frozen saliva. The man swung his blade in a clean arc, slicing across its chest. A howl ripped through the outpost as the creature stumbled back into the snow. Another beast clawed at the wall, tearing through thin metal, its head shoved inside, snapping at the air. The man struck again, driving his blade through the gap. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The creature screamed and fell away, but more shadows moved behind it. The child watched from the bed, her glowing eyes wide with terror. Her small body shook as she tried to sit up, but her limbs were too weak. Her hands trembled, the faint glow in her markings flickering like a dying candle. She whispered something in her alien tongue, words filled with fear and desperation. The man heard her voice, though he did not understand. He glanced at her quickly, then back at the doorway. His voice was firm, steady. "Stay down, little one. I'll keep you safe." The beasts attacked again, two at once. One slammed into the broken door. The other crawled through a crack in the side wall. Their growls filled the small space, hot breath steaming in the cold air. The man gritted his teeth, spinning his blade. The first beast lunged, claws raised. He met it with a strike to the throat, sparks flying as metal clashed against hardened bone. The second beast slithered through the side, its long body snapping forward like a snake, its jaws aimed for the child. The girl gasped and raised her glowing hand instinctively. Light burst from her palm, not strong, but enough to blind the creature for a moment. It shrieked and turned away, covering its face with its clawed arm. The man seized his chance. He charged, slamming his blade deep into the beast's chest. The creature thrashed, screaming, then collapsed into the snow-covered floor. The girl's light faded again, her chest rising and falling quickly. The effort had drained her more. Her body shook violently. She closed her eyes, whispering one last weak sound. The man rushed to her side, kneeling. His hand brushed her cold forehead. He whispered, softer this time, Don't stop fighting, you're stronger than you know. He tucked the coat tighter around her trembling frame, then turned back to the door. The beasts were not finished. Their howls grew louder outside, circling, waiting for another opening. The storm fed their hunger. Each time the wind roared, their cries rose with it, like a chorus of predators. The man knew the truth. The outpost would not last. The door was nearly gone. The walls broken. The heater flickered low. He had to choose. Stay and defend until morning, or try to escape through the storm. But looking at the weak child on the bed, he knew she would never survive outside. Not tonight. So he stood firm. His blade burned blue in his hands, his body tense, his heart steady. He would fight until there was nothing left in him. The beast struck again, claws raking the metal. A head forced its way through the broken door, drool dripping onto the floor. Its eyes locked on the child. But the man moved faster. He lunged, his blade cutting through its skull. The beast collapsed at the doorway, blocking it for a moment. Silence followed, only the storm's scream outside. The man's chest heaved with heavy breaths. His arms burned with exhaustion. But his eyes stayed sharp. He did not relax. He knew more waited, hidden in the snow. He turned back to the child. Her glowing lines were faint, but still there. She looked up at him weakly. Her voice cracked, broken but clear enough this time. Protector. The man froze. Her alien word was strange. But he understood. His heart tightened in his chest. She had named him, given him a place in her fragile world. He knelt down, brushing her hair gently from her face. Yes, he whispered. Protector. The heater sputtered, the flame shrinking low. The man cursed softly under his breath. He checked the fuel cell, nearly empty. The cold crept back into the room, pressing against them. He looked at the girl again, her small body trembling, her eyes flickered shut, and for a terrifying moment he thought she was gone. He shook her gently, her markings flickered. She was still alive, barely. Outside, the beasts howled again, more furious now. The man gripped his blade tighter. His body screamed with exhaustion, but he stood firm. This night was not finished. He knew the beasts would return, stronger, hungrier. He glanced back at the girl, the fragile life he now carried on his shoulders, and he whispered to himself, if I have to burn this world to keep her alive, I will. The storm raged, the shadows circled, the night pressed down heavy, and in that broken outpost, between life and death, one human and one small alien child clung to survival. The night stretched on, long and merciless. The storm screamed against the walls, rattling the broken metal like drums of war. The human stood with his plasma blade burning blue in the dark. His breath came heavy, but his eyes never left the door. He knew the beasts outside were not gone. They were waiting, gathering, hungering. The child stirred on the broken bed. Her small body shook under the heavy coat. Her glowing markings flickered weakly. She whispered faint sounds in her alien tongue, dreams or memories slipping from her lips. The man glanced at her, his chest tightening. He muttered softly, hold on, little one, just hold on. A sharp crash shattered the brief silence. The wall cracked open, claws tearing through rusted steel. A beast forced its head inside, snarling. Its long tongue slithered across the floor as it scented prey. The man spun and slashed. His blade cut deep, burning flesh. The beast howled and fell back, but more shadows pressed behind it. The outpost shook with each strike. Red eyes glowed through every crack. The man gritted his teeth. He could not fight them all in this small room. He needed to drive them back. He grabbed a broken fuel canister from the corner, sparks of an idea forming in his mind. He slashed the canister open, fuel dripping across the floor near the door. Then he pulled a flare from his belt. He struck it hard, red fire bursting alive. Without hesitation he tossed it onto the fuel. Flames roared upward, licking the walls. The heat drove back the storm wind that tried to enter. The beasts screamed, their snarls twisted with fear. The firelight danced across their glowing eyes, blinding them. They clawed at the doorway but would not enter the blaze. For a moment, the human had bought them space. He turned back to the child. Her glowing eyes were open, wider than before. She watched the flames and whispered faintly. Her hand lifted weakly, and the markings on her skin pulsed brighter. The man frowned, watching carefully. Her glow spread across her chest and down her arms, soft but steady. The light pushed against the cold air like a shield. The man felt its warmth even from across the room. The beasts outside howled louder, clawing the ground. Their fear was sharper now, mixed with rage. The child's glow faded as quickly as it came. Her body slumped again, exhausted. The man rushed to her side, kneeling. "Don't push yourself, you'll burn out," he whispered. Though he knew she did not understand, her eyes looked into his, weak but filled with trust. She breathed one word again. "Protector." The man felt his chest tighten. He brushed her hair gently, his jaw set firm. He stood once more, turning toward the firelit door. The beasts still circled, their growls vibrating the air. They would not give up, not until one side was dead. The storm raged harder, snow blasting against the outpost. The flames sputtered as wind forced its way inside. The man cursed under his breath. He had little fuel left, and his strength was nearly gone. But he would not stop. Suddenly, with a loud crash, a beast smashed through the side wall. Metal bent and tore as claws ripped the structure apart. The man turned just in time to block its strike. His blade clashed with bone, sparks flying. The beast roared, its jaws snapping inches from his face. The man grunted, shoving hard. His blade seared across its chest, cutting deep. The creature collapsed, its scream echoing. Blood and steam filled the air. But another beast pushed through behind it, claws slashing at the human's back. He spun, barely raising his blade in time. The strike ripped across his shoulder, tearing cloth and flesh. Pain burned through him, but he did not fall. The child gasped on the bed. Her markings glowed bright again, as if her fear fueled them. A wave of light pulsed from her small body. It struck the beast like fire. The creature screeched, stumbling back, blinded. The man seized the moment, his blade cutting clean through its throat. He turned toward her, stunned by the power she had unleashed. Her small frame trembled, her breath shallow. She was barely holding on. Yet she had saved him. The human's chest heaved, his wound bled, but he ignored it. He knelt beside her, pressing his forehead briefly to hers. "You're more than you know, little one," he whispered. His words were soft, filled with awe. The beasts outside grew silent. The fire cracked low. Only the storm's endless cry remained. The man listened carefully. His instincts told him they had not retreated far. They were waiting again, waiting for weakness. He pressed his hand over his bleeding shoulder. His eyes flicked back to the girl. She was unconscious now, her glow fading but still faintly alive. He stood, blade in hand, facing the broken walls and the storm. Tonight was not victory. Tonight was survival. And as long as he still breathed, he would not let the storm or the beasts take her. The wind howled. The snow slammed against the metal. And in the faint firelight, one human stood guard while a fragile alien child dreamed in flickering light. Between man and child, a bond had formed, not of words, but of blood, pain, and survival. And as the storm deepened, so too did that bond. The storm began to soften as dawn approached. The howling winds grew weaker, the snow fell slower, and the sky shifted from endless black to a faint gray. The man leaned against the wall of the outpost, his blade still in hand, his body heavy with exhaustion. His shoulder throbbed with pain where the beast had torn his flesh, but he kept his eyes sharp. The small alien child lay under his coat, her faint glow still alive. Her breathing was shallow, but steadier now than before. Every few moments she stirred, her tiny hand twitching as if reaching for something. The man would pause, touch her hand with his, and whisper softly, "I'm here, don't worry." When the heater finally died, the room grew cold again. But the storm outside was not as fierce. The man stood slowly, his legs stiff, and pushed aside the broken door. Snow drifted inside, but light spilled through the clouds for the first time in days. The land stretched out before him, endless white hills, sharp peaks in the distance, and silence where once there had been howls. The beasts were gone. For now, but he knew they would return. Hunger never left creatures like that. He went back to the child. She was awake now, her glowing eyes blinking in the weak daylight. She looked at him with confusion, then with something else. Trust. Her lips parted and a weak word came out. Protector. The man knelt beside her, brushing her tangled silver hair away from her small face. His jaw tightened as he nodded. Yes, I'll protect you, he said firmly. She could not understand every word, but she felt the promise in his voice. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched the cut on his shoulder. Her eyes widened at the blood. She whispered something in her alien tongue, her tone filled with worry. The man shook his head with a small smile. It's nothing, little one, don't worry about me. But he knew the wound was dangerous. It burned, and without medicine it could grow worse. He needed to find supplies, food, and real shelter. The outpost would not last another night. He stood and looked out again, scanning the horizon. His breath froze in the air as his eyes caught something. Movement far in the distance, a dark shape in the gray sky, low and slow. At first he thought it was another storm cloud, but then light glinted from its surface. A ship. The man's heart tightened. Ships did not fly over this frozen wasteland without reason. Whoever it was, they were searching. His eyes dropped to the child, still weak, still glowing faintly. His gut told him this ship was not here to save her. It was here for her. He closed the broken door quickly, his mind racing. If they found her, what would they do? Would they take her back to the people who had left her to die? Or worse, finish what they had started? The child must have sensed his fear. She looked at him, her wide eyes trembling. Her lips formed a broken whisper. They will take me. The man knelt beside her, his large hand resting gently on her small one. His voice was steady but low. I won't let them. You hear me? I won't let anyone take you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded weakly. Her hand squeezed his with what little strength she had left. Outside, the ship's sound grew louder, a low hum that rolled across the frozen plains. The man stood, pulling the strap of his pack tighter. He wrapped the child carefully in his coat, lifting her into his arms. She was light, too light, but she clung to him as if he was her last anchor. He pushed out into the cold once more. His boots crunched in the snow as he moved away from the outpost. Every step was heavy, but his mind was clear. He had to keep moving. He had to stay ahead. The ship descended lower, its shadow cutting across the snow. Beams of light swept across the ground, searching, hunting. The man pressed himself against a snow ridge, holding the child close. He lowered his head, whispering into her ear. Stay quiet, little one, stay with me. The child buried her face against his chest, her glowing lines dimming as if she was trying to hide her own light. The man held his breath as the beam passed close, brushing over the snow just meters away. The hum of the ship lingered, circling, searching. The man knew they would not leave easily. Whoever they were, they wanted her badly. That meant one thing. She was more important than she looked. When the ship finally drifted further away, he let out a slow breath. His arms tightened around her. He whispered, They won't get you. Not while I live. The girl opened her eyes again, weak but determined. She whispered one word again, Protector. But this time her voice was stronger, clearer. The man's lips curved into a faint smile. Despite the pain in his shoulder, despite the storm still raging in the distance, something new burned in his chest. It was not just duty, not just survival. It was a bond, forged in the storm, in the fire, in the fight against death itself. He looked across the frozen land, at the path ahead. The storm had not won. The beasts had not won. The cold had not won. And neither would the ones who hunted her. For now there was only one truth. As long as he breathed, as long as his heart still beat, the alien child was not alone. See. The frozen plains stretched endless under the pale morning light. The storm had eased, but the cold still cut sharp through the air. The man moved carefully through the snow, the alien child wrapped in his coat, pressed close against his chest. Her faint glow flickered weakly, but her eyes stayed open, watching him, trusting him. Above them, the ship circled lower, its dark shape glided across the sky like a predator. Lights swept across the land, scanning, searching. The man knew they would not stop until they found her. His legs burned, his wounded shoulder throbbed, but he did not slow down. He whispered to her, "Stay with me, little one, we're not done yet." The child's trembling hand clutched his coat tighter. Her lips parted as she whispered, "Protector." Her voice was stronger now, filled with both fear and faith. The man pressed his jaw tight. His eyes scanned the land until he spotted a cluster of rocks rising from the snow. He hurried toward them, ducking behind their cover as the ship's light swept overhead. For a moment they were hidden, silent, holding their breaths. Then the ship descended, engines roaring. Snow blasted into the air as it landed nearby. The ground shook under its weight. The man crouched low, holding the child closer. His heart pounded. He knew the time for hiding was over. The ship's ramp hissed open, and figures stepped out. Tall, armored, alien soldiers. Their faces covered by metal masks. Their weapons glowing faintly with energy. They moved with precision, spreading across the snow in search lines. The child trembled against his chest. Her glowing markings flickered wildly. She whispered through her fear, "They will take me?" The man's eyes hardened. His grip on her tightened. His voice was steady, like steel. "Not while I stand." He rose from behind the rocks, his blade igniting with a sharp hiss. Blue light cut through the cold morning air. The soldiers froze at the sight of him, a human, standing tall, a fragile alien child in his arms, blocking their path. One soldier stepped forward, his voice sharp through a translator. "The child belongs to us. Step aside, human. She is weak, unfit. She must be returned to her people or destroyed." The man's eyes narrowed. He lowered the girl gently to the snow behind the rocks, whispering, "Stay down, little one. Don't be afraid." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, standing tall before the soldiers. His voice was low but firm. "You abandoned her in the storm. You wanted her to die. You won't have her. Not now, not ever." The soldiers raised their weapons, glowing with deadly energy. The man's blade hummed, his stance steady, his heart pounding not for himself but for the child watching him. The first shot blazed through the air. He moved fast, his blade cutting the bolt aside. Sparks flew as he charged. His strike cut into the first soldier's chest, dropping him into the snow. Another soldier swung at him, but he ducked low, driving his blade upward. The battle erupted in fire and steel. The man fought with the fury of survival, every strike fueled by the promise he had made. He bled from his wound. His body screamed with exhaustion, but he did not stop. Behind the rocks, the child's hands glowed brighter than ever. Her markings flared, pulsing with energy. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered broken words. Her glow spread out in waves, lighting the snow like dawn. The soldiers stumbled, shielding their eyes from the sudden radiance. Their weapons flickered. The man struck again, his blade cutting through the weakened defense. He fought like a storm himself, unyielding, unstoppable. The child crawled forward, her glow wrapping around the man like a shield. His strikes grew faster, stronger. The soldiers, once fearless, faltered under the combined force of human steel and alien light. At last, the surviving soldiers stepped back, their leader raising a hand to stop the fight. His voice came low through the translator. "Enough. The child has chosen. Her power answers to you, human. She is no longer ours." The soldiers retreated, dragging their fallen back toward the ship. The ramp closed, the engines roared, and the ship lifted into the pale sky, leaving the human and the child alone on the snow. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of the wind. The man dropped to his knees, his blade dimming. His chest heaved with heavy breaths, blood seeping from his wound. He looked back at the child, still glowing faintly. Her wide eyes filled with both fear and relief. She crawled to him with trembling limbs. Her small hands pressed against his chest. Her voice cracked but clear. "Protector, stay." The man gave a faint smile despite the pain. His large hand cupped her small face gently. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. She leaned against him, her glow softening to a gentle light. For the first time since the storm began, warmth filled the frozen world around them. The man looked across the endless snow, the path uncertain, the dangers still many. But one thing was clear: he was no longer walking alone, and she was no longer a child abandoned. Together they had survived the storm, the beasts, and the soldiers. Together they had forged something stronger than fear, stronger than cold, a bond that no storm could break. And as they rose from the snow side by side, the storm behind them and the horizon before them, the truth was written in every breath. The human had not only saved her life, he had given her a reason to live,